Welcome to the Christian Liberation Organization. Thank you for joining us for GC7, the last in the series of God and Country. GC7, God and Country. Declaration of Independence, Part 7. For suspending our own legislatures. They didn't have to suspend our legislatures because they are controlled by the legal industry. This is what happens. It blows my mind, but people don't get it. You can have a good legislature that puts a bill together, and they can all vote on that bill. That bill does not become statute. When they vote in a bill, they say, okay, we will accept that bill. That bill then goes to committee. Guess what the committee is? Just a bunch of lawyers. What do you think that committee is doing? They are adding all kinds of stuff to it so they can get billable hours. This is what they are doing. This whole thing is a legal industry game. And declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. That is exactly what they are doing. They are basically saying, you can't live without our control. You can't get in your automobile and drive down the road because guess what? You are too stupid and you gave it away. That is what it is. The issue I have with that is they're abolishing our ability to be free of their legislators. We don't have to follow their legislators because they only make legislative rules or statutes. These are done by way of consent. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us, which is exactly what the government is doing. Hey, your own doctor cannot uphold his own oath unless he poisons you with your own CO2 by making you put on that mask. You can't go see a doctor unless you have this special shot. That's what they are doing, completely. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. What have they been allowing to happen? Pretty much all of that. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny. Sounds like every nurse giving a needle. Already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. That's their declaration. I would say that at this point, we fit them all. Everyone thinks that there are only a few. I am involved with 40 other groups. We should be large enough to shut down courtrooms just by showing up in numbers. Judges won't come into the courtroom because they knew it was just harassment and they knew the court was filled with those that also know. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, which is exactly what they are doing right now, with everyone bending over to get the shot. They have said to themselves that they need to figure out who all the weak people are. So, how did they do that? Who is going to wear a mask? Who is going to run and get that needle in their arm without thinking? They just do it. They are basically segregating us by displaying who is with them and who is not. This is exactly what they are doing. And has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers The merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Well, that is something that they didn't do. The military stood in a line and didn't believe in going and doing the mercenary stuff. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them up by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all the other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And, for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Every one of those men was tortured during this entire revolution that they went through. Many of them lost their lives, their family, and/or their fortunes. Yet, they signed this document knowing this. They knew the king would send out mercenaries just to kill them. Every one of them signed it willingly. Several entire families were murdered and burned. That's why they created a constitution. The whole creation of the Constitution was not for everyone. It was to create a government and create a citizenry of that government. But it did not stop our ability to be free without being under our government. Everyone has learned that in order to be part of this government, you need to be a voter. There are people above the citizen. There are people above the government. Those of us that are, whether they like it or not, are sovereign and without any ties to them, are above the government. That's the way it's supposed to be. Period. People that want to be less than the government vote. That's the reality of the day. There is nowhere in the Constitution that it ever says a voter. It says electors. There is a big difference. Everyone registers to vote. What are you doing when you register to vote? You are giving up your right. The word register means to give up. That's what you are doing. When you do that, you are asking to be under the government and not to be an elector. That's why they have the right to tax you. A municipality can only tax you if you are a voter. using the municipality. It can't tax everybody. Scripture reference, Colossians 3:10, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created it. This scripture is full of rich understanding that can only be fully seen in the original Greek. Thus, a breakdown of every word within it that holds greater understanding or correction is necessary to glean what God intended for us here. Note 1. There is no self in the Greek. Note 2. There is no which is being before renewed. Instead, there is simply the definite article the. Note 3. To a true before knowledge is not in the Greek. Instead, it is the Greek eis, which means into. Note 4. The Greek word translated here as knowledge is epignosis. The translation is okay, but incomplete. The Greek shows it fully means fitting, intimate knowledge. Note 5. The word translated as according to is the Greek preposition kata, which means bring down exactly. Note 6. There is no the before image in the Greek. Note 7. The word translated as image is the Greek icon, which means mirror-like representation. Note 8. The of the one who in the translation is just the in the Greek. Note 9. The word translated as it is the Greek personal pronoun autos, which can mean he, she, it, him, her, them when used in third person. With all these descriptions and corrections, Colossians 3:10 says, and have put on the new, the renewed into fitting intimate knowledge, bring down exact mirror-like representation, the created him. This scripture is describing how intimate our knowledge is with the Creator God, because he brought from himself down to us his exact representation into his created beings. Thus, as God is sovereign, so is his created self-imaged beings here on this world.